Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and boy, we got some great guests lined up for you on today's program. But before we get to our first guest, I just want to encourage you to check out the new Dove free app. It's available right now, and if you have a Apple product, you can go to the iTunes store, type in theDove, one word, and download the Dove app absolutely free. And if you have an Android product, just go to Google Play and again type in theDove, one word, and you can download the Dove app free. You can watch the Dove TV, you can listen to the Dove radio, you can listen to the Word for You Today with Bob Gash. You can order up a free written devotional, published devotional. Even Dave Kersey's there with Call to Worship, and we have some archives of previous programs, and of course the morning newscast. Everything there is really a great resource for you, and you can watch the Dove TV and listen to the Dove radio anytime. So check it out at the iTunes Store or at the Google Play Store, and just type in one word, the Dove, make sure it's one word, and you can enjoy the Dove app. It's absolutely free. And be sure to rate it when you do that. Take a few moments and let those people know that you think it's 5-star. And then take that information and share it with family and friends so that they too can watch and listen to the Dove. Well, our first guest today, our own Jerry Bilden, had a chance to talk to David Carr. He's the drummer with Third Day, and as you know, Third Day is coming to Southern Oregon right in the middle of the Jackson County Fair, and should be a fun event. So let's join Jerry and David as they have a nice chat together.
Okay, well, with us on the phone right now, the drummer of the band Third Day, David Carr. Third Day, one of our favorite bands here in Southern Oregon, and of course, anytime we get a chance to see them and hear them, we look forward to that, and that's coming up as well. But David, welcome. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, glad to call in. Good to talk to you.
Hey, couple things. First of all, let's start at the very beginning. What comes to mind when I say the Bullard Family Singers?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think what comes to mind is, first of all, I remember just being very dorky and geeky looking with my my glasses and my lack of any style back then, just playing drums for this little family kind of campy band. But it was fun. It was a start.
Well, and that's where you guys all kind of bumped into each other, playing at a church, from what I understand.
Exactly. We were all, it was, meant to be, obviously. But Third Day was Mac and Mark at the time, and Ty and myself were playing with this Bullard band, and we did our little set, and then this band was coming on next called Third Day, and Ty and I were like, let's leave, let's go to the Waffle House. So we left, we went to the Waffle House, and then fortunately our youth pastor, who was in this Bullard band, stuck around and listened to Third Day, and called me the next day and said, man, you should have stuck around. It was great. These guys are amazing, and they need a drummer, so you should call him. Here's Mac's number. And I called Mac, and it was like, hey, why don't we get together in my basement and just see if we can make music? And about one song in, I was pretty much, I knew it had a future.
So it clicked right away.
Oh, absolutely. It was just like instantly, wow, this is something.
How many years ago was that? When was that?
That was 20 years ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was in November of '92, I believe. We just kind of got together, and it's here we are, 20 years later.
I'd say it's all working out pretty good.
Yeah.
It's been a long road, but you guys, because a lot of bands obviously don't have that kind of longevity. And along with that comes a lot of big life, including family, wives and kids and things. Talk a little bit about that, about what Third Day has behind them as far as families is concerned.
Well, we all have, wives and kids, and Ty has 6 kids. He's kind of the overachiever in that department. Mac has 5, and then Mark and I each have 2. And, that's just part of life. You get, for the majority of people, you get married, you have kids, and you do life. And what's really been amazing for us is that though we get to be out here on the road and do this thing, in front of an audience, put albums out, and it has this sort of glamorous sheen to it. When we get off the road and go home, we're just husbands and fathers, and there are some big differences between us and a lot of our friends who have sort of the 9-to-5 kind of jobs, but only really in that department. We get a lot of time with our families, and some of us still mow our own grass and take the trash out, and we're pretty normal guys. It's almost hard to, we don't want to put on our rock star face and then take it off, and then, it seems kind of silly, but there is sort of this dual life kind of thing that happens.
Yeah, and you're right, because you obviously you have your family life, your home life, and what we think of as a normal or a regular lifestyle. Then you have the rock star element as well, because you guys have accomplished a tremendous amount. On top of that, though, you guys have something extra, and that's a ministry, and that's something that has to be balanced in all of this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ministry is it's not something we can force, and it's not something we can really. I don't believe we can effectively conjure it up on our own very well. I think it springs forth from. It's fruit that comes from reaping what we sow, and so. But the scary thing about that is, it's also how we pay the bills. So it could be very easy to kind of just go, well, hey, if we just do this, then people will think it's good, and people will think that we're, into it, and that we're serving God, and it could be very easy to fake it, and we've seen that over the years. Everybody's seen that in ministries and music and all kinds of TV sort of endeavors of ministry, and so ministry is such a scary word sometimes, because it can look very real and yet be very unreal.
Yeah.
I'm grateful, though. I'm really thankful that the name of Jesus is always real and always powerful, and it's amazing. Paul said, as long as the gospel is preached, that's the main point. And of course, we don't want to preach it with a false heart or a false attitude, and we strive to keep it real. And there are nights. I say this all the time. There are nights when I'm up on stage and I feel like I am going through the motions. I don't feel anything, I'm not feeling anything, any kind of passion for what I'm doing. And I hate that, But I think if anyone's honest, we all have to just do that sometimes. That's just humanity, and that's just life. But I'm so grateful that God has knitted us together in a way that He has sustained us through the great seasons and the tough seasons. And His word goes forth every night, and we know that good things happen.
And that's why you guys can stay together for 20 years, because you understand what this is really all about. A lot of folks get kind of on that roller coaster, and in the dry times, it's hard for them to keep going. In the high times, it is also tough to balance as well. But I got to mention to you, David, the other day I had a guy come up to my house who was going to do. They're part of tree trimming services, and they clean up the trees for the power lines and make sure that they don't blow down. And so he came up into my house and knocked, and he was going to tell me he was working on our property. And when he was all done, he looked at my T-shirt and he goes, "Oh, third day." He goes, "Hey man, I've seen them twice. They're awesome."
Cool.
Yeah, go cut our trees. That's awesome too. But now I've had others look at that name and it didn't register to them. Talk a little bit about not the band, but the name Third Day. Yeah, well,
Third Day. A lot of times people ask us what it means, and it's simply the resurrection of Christ on the third day. A lot of times I think we can, in the church, we can talk about Jesus dying for our sins and the forgiveness that comes from that, and it's so wonderful, and yet we stop there sometimes and we forget about just how amazing that third day was, because without that, I think the crucifixion was just complete tragedy. But with resurrection, it gives us new life. We died with Christ, but we've also been raised with Him. And to new life, and it's that sort of spiritual baptism of going under and dying with Christ, and now we have new life in Him, and that's the hope in all of it. That's the ultimate hope, and so we want to emphasize that. We want that to be what we're about, and to see the resurrection power of Christ in people's lives, and we see that night after night. We see people who. We hear testimonies from people who've come alive, and so just the name Third Day is so special to us, not just because it's the name on our CDs and our T-shirts and merchandise, but it's because of what Christ did and what God did through His Son to give all of us life.
Well said. I should mention that after one of your last concerts here, I had a friend come up and say, really comment on how good you were and really, really appreciated the concert. And he made a comment that stuck. He said, you know, these guys could obviously play secular music. They could enter into the music industry in the mainstream, and they could probably more than likely have a career. And I'm sure that carrot has been dangled in front of you guys at some point or other. Talk to us a little bit about that and what keeps you on track where you are now.
Well, you know, I'll be completely honest. We would love to have more opportunities to. We don't like the word crossover because it just sounds like you're leaving something to go somewhere else.
Right.
But we've used the word spillover a little bit. Just to say, hey, look, here's a good thing that is reaching a lot of people. Wouldn't it be great if it sort of could meander its way out into a broader audience? Because, you know, we don't want to leave what we're doing. We don't want to abandon what we do. But gosh, if more people can hear it, then great. But that being said, I think all of us know that just in the spiritual realm, there's a dividing line for people. And when you start talking about Jesus, it just divides. People don't want to. Christianity's never going to be cool. We're never going to make it cool enough, no matter how many things we try to do to make it cool. That's just not how it works. You know, this world is opposed to what we believe. It's opposed to God and to Christ. And it doesn't mean we can't shine that light in the world in the darkness. We need to. And it doesn't mean that people can't be mildly sort of attracted to it without totally giving into it. But if we are just trying to cater to that, I think we're going to end up sorely disappointed and frustrated. And, you know, I think we've realized with that carrot being dangled in front of us, and we've made a few attempts to have some of that spillover success. But we've realized, you know, we have such a great thing in our fan base and in our audience, and why would we want to abandon that? You know, at the same time, if when we get called to do the Tonight Show, we're going to go do the Tonight Show.
Right on.
So,
yeah, I would too. Hey, I have to ask you too. A very, very interesting email came to me. Oh gosh, it's been a couple years ago now, and it was you guys that you'd sent out to, I think, a bunch of program directors, radio stations, and it was a little video clip of you guys asking us to play a particular song. What it impressed me, though, was it wasn't your song, it was Trevor Morgan. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right, we did that. Yeah, we were helping Trevor out, trying to get him out there. And I thought that was awesome, David, and it really hit me. And Trevor Morgan, that song, it was Jesus Rides the Subway, I believe. Yeah, and that's right. It's still in my playlist right now because you guys sent me that video. And oh, that's cool. As a musician, I appreciate it, man. Well, yeah, no, we appreciated it. Do you have a chance to do those things a little bit more frequently now that you guys are established as you are? Absolutely. I mean, it's because I think a lot of programmers in radio and a lot of people who work in all kinds of Christian media, a lot of them haven't been doing it as long as we've been doing this. You know, it's kind of, we've earned almost a respect from that community to say, hey, look, would you consider doing this or consider playing that? Because, you know, and you know, there's always going to be a little bit of lobbying for our own interests and all that. And I think there's a healthy degree of that we can, you know, put out there. But you know, we've always appreciated just how responsive our fans are. If we say jump, they ask how high. And if we say, hey, will you sponsor these kids through World Vision, they do it. Yep, and that's true. And if we ask radio, hey, would you do us this favor, it's oftentimes met with a very warm welcome. So. All right. Well, I appreciate it. David Carr, drummer of Third Day. I'm holding up your album right now. The name of it is Miracle. And could you give us a word on this album? Yeah, well, you know, this album was technically speaking, was a really tough one to make, and we started making it at a time when I think we needed a miracle because we needed some inspiration. We were tired, we were feeling burned out, and yet it was time to make an album. So we went in the studio with this guy, Brendan O'Brien, who's a world-class, famous producer, rock producer, and he kind of pulled the inspiration out of us to make this record. And then in the 11th hour of making it, Mac came forward with this song called I Need a Miracle that was inspired literally 2 weeks before he wrote it. It was inspired by a story that we'd heard 2 weeks before from a couple whose son was about to commit suicide and take his own life. And he turns the radio on. This is up in New Jersey. He turns the radio on and he hears our song, Cry Out to Jesus.
and he stopped. He turned the car off, and he just said, I can't do this. I can't go through with it. And now he's serving God on the mission field, and his life was turned around, and a miracle happened there. We feel, and we don't feel like it was because of us, but we know God used something we've done, and it was incredibly humbling. And also it speaks so highly to what you guys do in radio that this not just spinning songs. This people's lives are being touched by this. So
you are absolutely right on it. It's more than just writing a good song that sounds good on the radio. This is really about changed lives, and you hit it right on the nose. David, thank you so much for spending time with us. We really look forward to seeing you guys when you come to town. I'd encourage everybody, when you get a chance to see Third Day, go see him and get this album, Miracle. David Carr, Third Day, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. We are so looking forward to being back in Medford, and just love the people of Oregon. We want to see as many of you out there as can fit in that place.
Well, it's going to be a fun time right in the middle of the Jackson County Fair, so should be a great event. And by the way, your ticket includes admission to the fair that day, so check it out. All right, coming up next, Steve Noble's going to be with us. He hosts a program called Called to Action, and he writes books, he talks, he does a lot of things, but we're going to talk to him about last week's 5-4 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll have Steve coming up in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome to Focus Today Mr. Steve Noble. He is the host of Called to Action radio program, which is heard across North Carolina Monday through Friday. And he also is the author of the book called The Making of a Christian Wacko. We'll talk to him about that. And in particular, we're going to talk to him about the Supreme Court decision last week. Hi, Steve. How you doing, my friend?
Great, Perry. Thanks for having me on. How are you today?
Oh, good. Christian Wacko. That's your own story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a subtle title, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Is it available in most stores?
Yeah, actually, it's available online now. It's a couple years old. You can get it through my website, which is just c2atoday.org. That phrase, Christian Wacko, I kind of took that from a Vance Havner quote. You're probably familiar with Vance Havner, but he said the church has become so subnormal that when one acts New Testament normal, it appears to people to be abnormal.
Yeah.
So I just took that word abnormal and translated it into wacko.
Well, that's good. We're all wackos. Hey,
Amen.
Nice to have you with us. Well, thanks for what you do. You're a colleague in this industry called Christian Broadcasting, and I commend your hard days and work. We are all kind of shocked, our brains on tilt, what the Supreme Court did last week on the 5-4 decision concerning not only DOMA, but not making a decision on Prop 8 in California. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I would challenge the notion that any of us should be shocked. I mean, I was disheartened and dismayed by that decision, but I certainly was not shocked by it. I think the Supreme Court, unfortunately, like Congress, like many of our state governments, is starting to just reflect accurately the condition of the nation and the people's hearts and the people straying away from the things of God. So, unfortunately, I wish I could say I was shocked, but I wasn't. It was interesting. Of course, there's two different things here on the Defense of Marriage Act. We have to remember that they only struck down Section 2, which was dealing with benefits to people in states where homosexual marriage is now legal, and being able to partake in over 1,000 federal government ways that they can take an advantage of that financially. But on the Prop 8 thing, yeah, I mean, Perry, that was the black robe regimen, a new definition of that from the Supreme Court back to the Ninth Circuit and then back to the California court system that basically looked 7 million California voters in the face, not once but twice, and said, you know what, the will of the people on this subject no longer matters. And that for me is the most disheartening aspect of it.
Well, exactly right. And I think that's what we have to understand by them not taking on Prop 8 was they basically empowered the court over the will of the people no matter what.
Yeah, and some people, even some people here in North Carolina, were trying to spin that by saying, in a positive way, I mean, these are people that, Perry, you and I would consider friends and allies, saying, hey, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court codified the state's right to decide its own definition of marriage. No, they didn't. They codified the Ninth Circuit and the judicial activists in the state of California with the ability to trump the will of the people. So it's really disheartening. But one thing I like to remind people about on my radio show and whenever I get a chance to speak in great programs like yours, Perry, is that, hey, listen, we can legislate morality in this nation, but we can't legislate righteousness. Mm-hmm. Righteousness is only going to come about through somebody's changed life through the power of Jesus Christ. And that's something we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, well said. All right, so how are Christians to react to this, in your opinion, Steve? Because, you know, I've heard all the emotions, you too. If you get call-ins like we do, you hear all the emotions. But what would you say to the Christians out there? What's our response to these decisions?
Well, first of all, one thing I'd like to remind people of, Perry, is that, listen, I run in a lot of conservative Christian circles, as do you. And it's easy to get 95%, 99% agreement that we're not happy with the current administration. Although I will ask a follow-up question and say, all right, now how many of you that are unhappy with the current administration pray for the administration, pray for the president regularly? And most hands in those crowds go down, unfortunately. Of course, Scripture calls us to pray for those in authority over us. So number one, we cry out to God. We cry out to God for ourselves, for the real church in America, for revival in the church. We cry out on behalf of the nation. And then I think it forces us to focus on the fact that, listen, Perry, we're no longer the majority in this nation anymore. We have to understand that if you're a biblical worldview, Jesus-following Christian, you're a minority, right? And you're a subculture, and you got to really embrace that role and not think that you can turn the whole nation around. God can certainly do that. The heart of the king's in the hand of God. We know that. But we have to understand that we're a subculture. We need to start acting like that, which requires us to be a lot more serpent-like, of course, in how we approach it. And so I don't look at how do we, quote-unquote, save the nation anymore. I certainly pray for our nation and for our leaders, but I know that the gospel must go forth, which changes people's lives, and then those lives will be reflected. Those changed lives can be reflected in the realm of politics.
All right. What do you think's next, Steve? I mean, with these decisions coming out of the Supreme Court, and I realize a lot of people are not really interpreting these correctly, and those who are pro same-sex marriage really jumped on the bandwagon fast and said, oh, now the doors are open, let's go for it, when really they are not. But what do you think's next? Because I just don't see them giving up on this at all. In fact, one commentary said our goal is all 50 states, benefits in all 50 states.
Well, of course, that's the thing. Now we can take a little joy in the fact that, you know, the Supreme Court could have trumped the whole thing. Last week they could have made quote unquote gay marriage the law of the land like they did with Roe v. Wade, but they didn't. And of course, Justice Thomas on there. Well, actually, it's Kennedy who's much more concerned with where the culture is in general. I think those guys and gals sensed that the country isn't ready yet to fully embrace this whole notion of gay marriage. And so they kind of punted it, although obviously at least 4 out of the 9 justices want to go there right now. I mean, they're no longer there to interpret the law and protect the Constitution. Mm-hmm. They're like most politicians, just progressing their worldview. I think that the homosexual agenda, that's the negative side of it. They're going to continue to look for every opportunity they can. They're going to bring lawsuits up. They're going to go through the court system because that's where they have traction. They don't have traction with the people. Not enough yet. The thing that really concerns me, Perry, which is why we really have to focus on people 30 and under. I mean, the percentages of those folks 30 and under that are okay with homosexual marriage is over 65% now. I mean, that's where the problem is in terms of the vote of the people. Right now, the game is in the courts, but they just have to wait it out because, unfortunately, the culture is moving in that direction the younger that you get.
All right. So, There's a couple of things here. Do you think we can reverse the destruction of America, slow it down, or you think God literally is involved in it now from the standpoint, if you look at these scandals in Washington, D.C., it appears that the covers are coming off? I mean, how are you interpreting the big picture?
Well, in the big picture, this is where, listen, let's remind ourselves and all of our listeners, Perry, that to use my words, God still rules the universe with his feet up. God didn't freak out last week with the Supreme Court justices making those decisions and going, oh man, this is really spinning out of control. It's never out of God's control. And all these things will be used for his glory. And again, I speak about all of this from a Christian biblical worldview. Listen, I'm not hopeless about the state of the nation, but I am realistic about what it takes. It's not going to be a top-down solution. Listen, this came to me last week, Perry, that I think we're a lot like the people of Jerusalem in Jesus' day. And we keep putting another guy up on the donkey and running him into the city, hoping that he's going to take over and everything's going to be fine. And we know, of course, that's not why Jesus came. Not that time. The second time he comes back, he will come to rule and absolutely take over. But we have to quit looking to Washington to be our solution. We have to be a grassroots people, infecting the people around us with the love and the hope of the gospel, seeing those lives changed and transformed. So I have great hope for the nation, but it's through the gospel, it's through the proclamation of God's word, which is becoming less and less popular. I actually like that, Perry. I like the fact that the house is burning to a certain extent because it's going to force the real church to be the church. And I think that's what the nation needs, is to see real Christians, real biblical, born-again Christians, rise up with love and humility, but to preach the gospel, whether it's popular or not, to preach God's truth, whether it's popular or not. Our job, Perry, is to be faithful. God deals with the fruitfulness.
Boy, that's so well said, Steve. Amen. As this same-sex marriage debate continues to heat up, it doesn't appear to be a pulpit topic. I don't know if it's because we're afraid to talk about it or we don't have a counterpoint to it. We know the Bible is clearly says it's a sin. We'll say, well, we love the sinner but not the sin. We're not addressing this. And can you give me a quick response on this? I got about a minute.
Yeah, I think pastors are largely industrial and not ministerial, and they're afraid of the backlash. They're afraid of it might cost them some money in giving. Listen, let's go back to what Paul said to Timothy. Preach the word in season and out of season. This is not a popularity contest. This is the faithfulness contest. And yeah, unfortunately, Perry, I think we have way too many pastors across the 300 churches in America that are more worried about protecting their kingdom than they are building God's.
Wow, well. Hey, thank you, my friend. Keep up the good work. We'll have you back, okay?
We'll be happy to do it. Thanks, Perry. God bless you.
Later. All right, Steve Noble with us today. All right, stick around. Coming up next, John Mittendorf's in the house. We'll be talking about why young people go to college and lose their faith.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, always a delight to have John Mittendorf in the house. And John, we're going to talk about why kids go off to college and lose their faith. And I know it's a really passionate topic for you, as me as well. Before I get into all of that with John, I just want to remind our viewers and our listeners that the Dove app is available. It's a free app, and if you have, whether you have Apple products or Android products, you can go to the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store and type in The Dove, that's one word, The Dove, and you can download the Dove app free on your devices, and you're able to watch the Dove TV live, listen to the Dove Radio live. You can get archives of previous shows with John Mittendorf. You can listen to the Word for You Today. You can order a Word for You Today. Boy, there's all kinds of things on there. You can listen to Call to Worship with Dave Kersey. It's just a terrific resource for you. So check it out and then share it with your friends, and then take a few moments, if you will, and rate it. And again, go to the iTunes Store if you have Apple products. Go over to the Google Store, Google Play Store if you have Android products, and just put in The Dove, and boom. Everything we do here in these four little walls is right there on that little device. John, you had...
Well, good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Listen, you had an interesting response to one of our previous shows.
Oh, boy. Our show last month, I think it was a blockbuster, because, you know, I run into people, you know, and people say, boy, what a great program. I never realized. Thank you very much. You hit the nail on the head. I got a couple phone calls, and then I got an email.
Yeah.
And I think I should go back and just review very quickly for our listeners that may not remember last month and what we're doing, and we're going to give this book away this morning, by the way, already gone.
Already gone, yeah.
That is the result of a survey that was taken by a company that was commissioned to try to figure out why so many people are leaving the church, and specifically young people, and basically this current generation. And a couple things that they said was, and I think probably the blockbuster encapsulation of that book goes something like this, and this is a quote from the book. The core problem behind the exodus of young people in churches has been teaching only half of the truth, and the other half we've given up. We preach the gospel, the crucifixion, the resurrection, which is important, but we preach about, and we also preach about trusting Jesus, and we preach about morality, but all the while the attack on Genesis is raging, causing doubt, fueling unbelief, and undermining every single thing we say. And as a result, the next generation does not believe in the authority of Scripture. The Scriptures have become irrelevant, and there is no connection between spiritual, scriptural things and real practical things. Currently, most Christians, particularly young people, are not capable of defending their faith.
Yeah.
And when they go into school, in fact, they gave a very interesting statistic that for those people that were interviewed, and they interviewed over 20,000 people all around the country, that out of the people that were interviewed, 40% first had doubts about the Scriptures in middle school.
Wow.
We tend to think, well, college gets them.
Yeah.
No, it's way before that. 43.7 had their first doubts in high school, and then 10% by the time that they reach college were doubting. So really the doubts start back in middle school.
Yeah.
And you know, when you go back to Genesis, when Satan encountered Eve, the first thing he said was, did God really say?
Yeah.
And so when they sit in church, you know, they basically listen to the New Testament, you know, which is fine. But then when they're out in the secular media and they watch television, you know, Bill Nye, the science guy, evolution is the basis of science, and so on and so on, the door starts to crack open just a little bit. And then when they get to school, here's a professor standing up there, or a teacher, you know, evolution is fact. And as soon as they start to wonder a little bit, you know, the door is wide open.
Yeah.
So, as you said, right after the program last month, I got an email, and I want to read that, and I want the people that are listening or watching to listen to this very closely. She gives her name in a brief introduction. She says, I'm living in Washington State right now taking a biology class. Biology or geology are the two biggies. My mom mentioned your name as someone who would be helpful to talk to, as the topic of evolution is discussed a large part of the time in my class. I am very rusty on what I know about the evolution versus creation discussion, and I am finding myself feeling, and I think she wanted to say defeated, but she says defended. I'm feeling myself almost defeated as I sit in my class and listen to my professor teach it as fact. I was wondering if you could point me to some resources for me to learn more, and what sort of questions would be good for me to ask in class. And boy, there's a bombshell right there. Yeah, hey, Prof, I got a question, and here's 50 people all sitting in there looking at you, right? Okay, here we go. I am also assigned to write a paper on evolution and required to watch 2 videos on it. Okay? I am not sure how to approach the paper and have been putting it off, as it is now due next Monday, and I think I got this on Thursdays. That's the way I operate, you know. Don't worry about it till the night before, you know, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do about this.
Well, you know, this email's packed with so much. First of all, I want to commend this young lady for realizing she had some roots in her faith she needed to go back to.
Absolutely.
And secondly, she had the fortitude to really do her homework and think about, wait a minute, I got to reach outside myself for help. And 3, this email proves exactly what we're trying to say is your young people are going into these environments and they're being indoctrinated into a supposed fact. Evolution is fact. It's not. It is not.
It is not. And so
what'd you do?
Well, I had an opportunity to talk to her. You know, I wrote her back and I said, you know, call me up anytime. So she called me back. We probably talked for about 45 minutes, and I said, you know, I said a couple things for you to think about. I says, you know, I'm really happy and pleased that you want to stand up for your Christian faith, but you're in a dilemma. In that, you have to be very careful on what kind of a professor you have. I said, what kind of a professor do you have? And she said, well, I think he's basically a nice guy. Some professors are very aggressive and very negative towards, I'm going to say, creationism or the scriptures. They don't want to hear about it, and if you want to contest them in class, you make them look bad. That's not good.
Right.
So I recommended that she go to her professor privately and give him a quick background on where she was from and what she would like to do. That she would like to write a paper on creationism, or the creationism viewpoint would probably be a better way to describe that.
Right.
And so she did that. And then we probably talked for a half hour, and I said, basically, I said, you know, science is on your side, it is not on your professor's side. And she says, so what do you mean by that? I said, creationism, well, excuse me, evolution violates all the basic principles of science and nature. She goes, well, I've never heard that before. I said, I know that. I said, as an example, I said it violates, and we went through it, I don't need to go through that again this morning, but you know, the first and second laws of thermodynamics, you have the law of biogenesis, which says life only comes from pre-existing life. We went right down the road.
Let me interrupt you. Let me just say that you prepped her.
Yes.
She wrote her paper.
Yes.
And we're going to tell you what she got in the grade.
When we come back,
When we come back. We'll be right back with John Mittendorf.
All right.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back with John Mittendorf, and we're talking about young people in school defending their faith, which goes all the way down to middle school these days. And by the way, we're going to be giving away a book coming up in just a few moments. This is put out by Kinham and Britt Beamer.
Yeah, that's Answers in Genesis, which is the Already Gone book.
Yeah, this is a fabulous resource. Whether you win this or not, check it out at Evangel or Christian Discount Books in Jacksonville or online. I guess you can go to Answers in Genesis and get it too.
Yes, you can.
But I tell you what, this is a great resource for parents and everybody. Anyway, through our discussion on this matter, a listener got a hold of John, and she is a biology student, and her professor was pretty much advocating that no,
not pretty much.
Well,
was advocating.
It was advocating that evolution is fact. All right. So anyway, she challenged you. You gave her some great wisdom.
Yep.
Go meet with the professor privately, kind of get a feel of his pulse.
Yep.
And say, I'd like to write a counter
paper. And would
paper.
he support that or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was her email after the class. And this email is probably about 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
Hi John, I just received my final grade for my biology class today, as well as the grade for my evolution assignment. So I thought I would share an update. Overall, I finished with a B in the class and received an A on the evolution assignment. I spent hours on this assignment reading, researching, and compiling my notes, and although it was relatively only a small portion of the grade, I am thrilled. I ended up turning in late, but my professor gave me some grace and did not deduct any points for the later submission. I also ended up having a very interesting conversation with him after class about what I believe and why this assignment posed an interesting challenge for me.
Everything we talked about is encapsulated right there.
Oh, we got one more sentence.
Yeah.
Thanks again for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it and value learning more about these important issues and how to better engage society as a believer. I'm taking microbiology during the summer, so I know the topic of evolution may continue to arise, and so, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so, but, you know, Perry, there is a classic example, and this is something we've talked about before multiple times. There's a problem out there, and the major problem is our kids, our children, and I'm going to say grown-ups too, are not really educated in the historicity and the accuracy of the scriptures in Genesis. As you and I have talked about before, if Genesis is not correct as stated, then what else in the Bible is not correct?
Well, then everything's negotiable.
Then everything else, and particularly the resurrection. If the resurrection is negotiable, we have a major problem.
Right.
And so when our young people walk into school, here's this professor teaching, as she said, evolution as a fact. I have to watch videos on it. I have to do reports on it so you can see where it's going. And by the way,
you did give her Ben Stein's Expelled to look at.
Yes, I did. I said, have you seen the movie Expelled, Ben Stein? She says, no, I haven't. I said, you ought to watch it. And I said, I want you to notice one thing. The 3 top evolutionary scientists in the world, Provine, Eugenie Scott, and Dawkins could not defend evolution. When Ben Stein asked them, where did life come from, they couldn't answer the question. But yet, when you take those people and you put them in their own environment, then they're a rocket ship for evolution. But you know, we talk about education, we talk about secular schools. Did you know that there's now a push to get this type of teaching in on homeschooling materials?
No. Into, I mean, evolution into homeschool?
Yeah, materials. Yeah. Just a quick overview, Perry. But the homeschooling movement is under attack. A recent article in the Atlantic magazine featured a new class of homeschooling parents who want what they called more science, and you know what that means, in textbooks published by evangelicals. But here's the kicker. Already 2 publishers, Sunlight and Christian Schools International, want to offer a balanced treatment, but it isn't. Another publisher, Test of Faith, offers homeschool curriculum that specifically teaches God-directed evolution. And if that isn't enough, 5 Wheaton college professors are writing a college text to promote the consensus view on origins. 2 Bryan college professors are writing a curriculum for younger students, and it goes on and on and on. So not only has the evolutionary thrust been around a long time in secular schools, now they're starting in homeschooling Christian academia.
Isn't there a clash though coming, John? Because when you get down to the truth of science, if they can't, if the evidence of science, excuse me, the truth of science rests upon the evidence of evolution, which cannot be sustained, you got a problem.
Yes. Now how do they get around that problem? They don't talk about it.
So they just drop it.
They just drop it. But what they do is they just talk about evolution as fact, and they just keep pressing the same fact. In fact, I'm comfortable in saying that the evolutionary attack on the Bible is a very united front, but the Christian response to that
is very weak
and very fragmented. As an example, there's 110 colleges in the Christian Coalition, the Christian Coalition of Colleges. Only 10 teach Genesis as written, as literal history. That means 100 Christian colleges have differing viewpoints on Genesis. So then why shouldn't people be confused about what to believe?
Okay, let's bring this down to moms and dads that are listening, and they're saying, all right, what is my student learning? Whether they're in middle school, high school, or college, what are they learning? Well, we know that if they're any kind of in secular environment, they're learning that evolution is fact.
Right.
All right, so this puts the weight back on the church to counter that. If we're going to teach the scripture, we have to teach all of it.
The church and parents.
Where do we insert, and how do we insert the creation evidence into our catechism?
From the beginning. Parents at home would be a great start. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well how are they going to do that? Because a lot of parents are probably thinking, well I don't have a lot of education in that. And so I brought along a couple of examples. This is Institute Creation Research. Acts and Facts, that is free. If you want to subscribe, just go to Acts Creation Institute, creationinstitute.org on the internet. You can sign up for that. It's icr.org, and you can get that for free. It's got great articles every month. And one of my favorites is Answers, this magazine right here. If you want to show that, and then open it up to the middle, Perry, you will notice that in the middle there's a special section for kids only. And there is the information for you, and they have a complete curriculum on biblical approach towards Genesis from a kid's perspective. And so parents have a great resource to choose from.
Well,
and also, let me butt in just for a second, and that also applies to Sunday school teachers also, Perry.
Yeah, I just think that we ought to seriously look at this as part of our Sunday school curriculum. And it goes back to Genesis. First of all, it's a fascinating book to uncover. and it can be sustained.
The Answers magazine, you can go to aig.org and you can sign up for that magazine too. And I think that magazine comes once every couple of months. This magazine is a quality magazine. It's got articles all the way through this. I mean, it's just great information. So people say, well, I don't really have the resources to be reading all these books and studying all these PhDs on evolution and creation. You don't have to. I mean, there's a lot of resources that are available. And if that material is taught from the beginning in the home and in the church and Sunday schools, then the kids have a great resource that when they walk into a classroom and the teacher is saying, well, evolution is this and evolution is that, they're sitting there thinking, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. Now, if you are a student,
fear of their grade, see?
Well, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
If you're a student in a class, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to compromise your faith and are you going to go along with it? Or are you going to stand up like this student did? And of course the results are fabulous. And this is my recommendation. You've got to know your teacher first. And by that I mean sit down with him, as you mentioned, privately and say, this is where I'm coming from. If I write a paper on creation or the biblical approach to origins, would you support that? Will you let me do that? And I've heard stories of some students going to teachers and the teachers say, well, why don't you give an hour presentation next week in front of class on it? I'd love to do that. Love to do that as an alternative viewpoint. But if you have a teacher that is very aggressive and very hostile towards the biblical approach to origins, to be able to raise your hand and say, I don't believe that in class, or to take your teacher on in class in front of the class and to make him look bad, that could be very detrimental to your grade.
Yeah, I mean, you may want to transfer to another class, another teacher. Well, seriously.
Well, true, yeah. But I think sitting down in private beforehand.
Yeah, that's really wise.
That's key.
Yeah.
That's key to see where he's at and if he supports that, so you don't, I would say, shock him with something in class. You're in a hostile environment already.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're primarily talking college level there, but in high school, do the same thing?
I would do the same thing in high school. And actually, I think some students are very capable of doing that in middle school also.
Yeah. If they're creative thinkers, but if they're not taught creative thinking, then...
The problem is, Perry, when you stop and think about it, such as this email that we just read, she was not really comfortable in taking the teacher on, or she was really starting to wonder because she didn't really have a background in it. But once she had a background, a little bit of a background in it, she writes an A paper.
Yeah, I think that is the key, because she had enough of good teaching in her to ask the right question at the right time.
Right, exactly right.
Well, John, thank you. Again, Answers, this is...
That's Answers Magazine. You get that from aig.org, or you can go to Acts and Facts, which is free. That's icr.org.
Okay. And check it out. All right, we're going to give away this book. Did we say how many callers?
No.
Okay. Hope they're listening out there. Caller number 5 gets this book called Already Gone, Why Your Kids Will Quit Church and What You Can Do About It. This is a great resource. So caller number 5 at 776-5368 or toll free at 1-800-373-5368. John, thank you so much. I know we're just scratching the surface on this, and you have much passion. Quickly, what can we get into next time?
I'm still debating on that, Perry, so we'll wait and see.
He's a debater. Call and get John to come to your church and teach Genesis, all right, to your young people. Thanks, John.
You bet, Perry.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.